watching Gravitas. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Let's begin. Well, on Gravitas tonight, we are decoding what exactly happened in those few hours between Donald Trump threatening Iran and then withdrawing from today's strikes. With the UAE deeply impacted, could the reason be the rift between West Asian countries? We answer this tonight for you. Xi Jinping is going to be meeting with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, less than a week after he met Donald Trump. Will a stronger Russia-China alliance jolt the United States at a time of global uncertainties? And what is expected from this very crucial visit by the Russian president? We break it down for you. And here in India, the heat wave in New Delhi and surrounding areas has left people gasping for cooler temperatures and a much-needed respite from the increasing mercury level. Well, Donald Trump was ready to strike Iran. The targets were allegedly locked. The message had already been sent out on his Truth Social. But just hours later, everything changed. Trump dropped out another Truth Social post where he said that the planned strikes have been called off. So what happened between those two Truth Social posts? Well, Gulf nations might be the answer. According to Trump, the request to pause military action came from the leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, these countries, who are all close American partners, appear to have delivered a clear message to Washington. Another round of strikes could push the region into a further full-scale disaster.
I was an hour away. We were all set to go. You're talking about yesterday.
Yes.
We were going to be striking it would have been happening right now. Yeah, it was all done. Right? The boats, the ships are all loaded. They're loaded to the brim. And we were all set to start.
Mr. President,
they said that they feel they've had for the first time in almost 47 years. You know, Iran's been the bully of the Middle East for 47 years.
All right, we're cutting across to Beijing at the moment where Russian President Vladimir Putin is landing. In fact, he has landed, as you can see, a warm welcome being given to the Russian president, the Chinese premier there, Li Qiang, welcoming Vladimir Putin. Remember, this is an extremely crucial visit for the two countries and the geopolitical situation that persists at the moment. Vladimir Putin smiling and waving at all of those people who have come to the airport, converged there to welcome him. Later, of course, during his visit, he will be meeting the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Russia and China, remember, have described their partnership as a friendship with no limits. And time and again, they have displayed that despite their differences, they have made sure that they align with each other, that they have a strong partnership, which will now be strengthened with Vladimir Putin visiting Beijing. Remember, this is the Russian president's first foreign tour this year. This is his 25th visit to China in the past few years. There you can see, younger teenagers have converged at the airport to welcome, holding Chinese and Russian flags, really denoting the kind of friendship that the two countries share. But as far as the agenda of this meeting is concerned, remember, extremely important to note that this visit comes less than a week after Donald Trump's visit to China. It also comes amid deep geopolitical uncertainties and the volatility that the entire world is grappling with due to the Iran war. And therefore, oil remains a big agenda on this visit. A gas pipeline will be, talked about. It is expected to be talked about. And of course, trade remains the #1 agenda as far as China and Russia is concerned. So Vladimir Putin there at the Beijing airport being welcomed by Chinese officials. And later, of course, he's expected to meet with Xi Jinping. All right, talking about the Iran war, when Donald Trump launched the war alongside Israel on the 28th of February, he estimated that it would end in 4 to 5 weeks. The conflict is now in its 3rd month, and Trump is caught between his dueling impulses to force Iran into submission and to declare victory and move on. The conflict has already exposed how vulnerable the Gulf really is. Iran responded to the war by targeting energy facilities, civilian infrastructure, and strategic sites across the region using missiles and drones. The closure of Hormuz added to the toll after sending global oil markets into panic. A Financial Times report last week stated that Riyadh has been discussing the idea of a non-aggression pact between Iran and other West Asian countries as part of the wider talks about what the region could look like after the end of the US-Israel war against Iran. Tehran, remember, has long argued that regional countries should handle their own security without Western intervention. But the big question remains whether Israel would be part of any such arrangement. Now, there is a chance that without Israel's participation, this happens. The plan could become counterproductive, as Gulf states now see both Iran and Israel as major sources of instability in the region. Concerns about Israel have also grown since the 7th October Hamas attack and the wars that have followed since. The UAE has been deeply shaken by the conflict. Attacks on energy facilities and even threats to the Barkan nuclear plant have hit their economic confidence hard. Tourism has fallen, real estate activity has slowed, and billions have been wiped off Gulf stock markets. The UAE says that those drones came in from Iraq. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has tried to push a broader political message. He accused the United States and Israel of using what he called divisive politics to turn Muslim countries against each other. Speaking during a meeting with Pakistan's Interior Minister, Pezeshkian claimed that these divisions were designed to weaken the Islamic world and prevent regional unity. Now, whether that message resonates across the Gulf remains unclear at the moment. For the moment, the fragile ceasefire is still holding in West Asia, but if Iran is attacked again, then it will swamp with drones and missiles in retaliation, and that will leave the Gulf Arab nations having to brace for intensified attacks on their energy infrastructure. Striking Gulf oil fields, refineries, and ports, remember, is one of the most potent ways for Iran to inflict pain on the global economy and put pressure on Trump. If the damage is major enough, countries like the UAE, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia will be caught in the crossfire once again, further deepening this war that many of the Gulf leaders are trying to avoid. They call it a friendship with no limits, and Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping have displayed it many a times in the past. The Russian president is in Beijing. His first foreign tour this year, it coincides with the 25th anniversary of the Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation between Russia and China. It also comes, remember, less than a week after American President Donald Trump was in China, where he was accorded an extravagant banquet, but wasn't handed out much of a substantial deal. In contrast, President Putin's visit feels more low-key, with little information having been released in advance. As per reports during Trump's visit, Xi Jinping had jokingly name-dropped Putin to Trump when the two leaders were walking through Zhongnanhai, telling him how the Russian president had visited the place before him. So while the Americans hoped that they can slightly wear off Moscow's influence on Beijing, clearly that is a tough task. Remember, despite differences on some issues, Russia and China have ensured that trade flows and diplomacy is strengthened. In the Hormuz crisis, China's own risk, which it had taken on Russian energy, now seems to be showing results. China's domestic energy security in an increasingly volatile world has been secured, at least for the time being, thanks to Russia. In line with this, the two leaders will talk in detail about the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, for which Russian gas giant Gazprom and the China National Petroleum Corporation reportedly signed a preliminary deal after years of stalled negotiations. Now, this pipeline is expected to be a game changer, delivering 50 billion cubic meters of Russian gas to China via Mongolia. But it's not just the Iran war. Putin and Xi are aware that the Chinese silence against Russian aggression on Ukraine can be used in its own invasion of Taiwan if and when it decides to. Putin had last visited China in September 2025 for the annual summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. At the time, Xi Jinping had called Putin an old friend, while the Russian leader addressed Xi as his dear friend. Then in April this year, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Beijing. He and President Xi described the relationship as precious in the current international context. So where does this leave America, a country which, under Donald Trump, is getting increasingly isolated from allies and has been embroiled in multiple wars? Well, remember, by hosting foreign leaders, China is seeking to strengthen its own image as a pillar of global stability, as opposed to America, which is struggling to end the war in Ukraine and contain a separate war with Iran that has disrupted global energy flows across the world and increased inflation at home for Americans. America, many believe, has been seeking support from Russia and China through backchannel talks to convince Iran to concede to Donald Trump's demands, essentially provide an off-ramp to Trump to get out of this war. On the other hand, you've got Iran that sees support from Putin and Xi as very critical to hold off American forces. And the United States is aware that Russia has been offering intelligence and satellite support to Iran. In a March interview with the Fox News channel, Donald Trump said, and I quote him, "A bit. Moscow might be helping them a bit." Now, while Washington and Moscow battle it out, at the center of it is Beijing. The Russia-China partnership highlights the growing pressure on the United States in the uncertainty that it has created and it finds itself in. Observers say that the Xi-Putin summit will send a signal to the world that the China-Russia strategic partnership remains steadfast, and any attempt by the United States to create a rift between them is destined to fail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has wrapped up the third India-Nordic summit, which was held in Norway's capital, Oslo. During the joint statement after the summit, PM Modi said that India would merge its scale with the expertise of the Nordic nations when it came to green technology, and together, both sides would work for the betterment of the planet.
आज हमने भारत और नॉर्डिक संबंधों को ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजी एंड इनोवेशन स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप का स्वरूप देने का निर्णय लिया है। इस ग्रीन टेक्नोलॉजी पार्टनरशिप से हम आइसलैंड की जियोथर्मल और फिशरीज, नॉर्वे की ब्लू इकोनॉमी और आर्कटिक और सभी नॉर्डिक देशों की मैरीटाइम और सेंसिटिविटी में एक्सपर्टीज को, सस्टेनेबिलिटी की एक्सपर्टीज को भारत के स्केल के साथ जोड़कर पूरे विश्व के लिए एक बेहतर भविष्य सुनिश्चित करेंगे।
Now, before the summit, Prime Minister Modi held back-to-back bilaterals with the leaders of Iceland, Finland and Denmark. He said that during his meeting with Iceland's Prime Minister, Kristrún Frostadóttir, they discussed improving ties in areas such as clean energy, fisheries, sustainability, geothermal energy, carbon capture and storage and other sectors. During his meeting with the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, he said that they spoke about expanding cooperation in sectors such as water resources, clean energy, shipping and food processing. He also added that he had invited Danish pension funds to expand their investments in India. Prime Minister Modi's meeting with the Finnish Prime Minister, Petteri Orpo, involved discussions on working together in sectors like 6G, AI, education, nuclear energy and much more. It was after these bilaterals that Prime Minister Modi attended the India-Nordic summit. With the summit now wrapped up, PM Modi is now headed to Italy for the final leg of his five-nation tour. Prime Minister Modi will be landing in Rome soon. He will then go on to have meetings with Italian leadership. And for more details, our assistant editor for Foreign Affairs, Siddhant Sibbal, has sent us this report from Oslo. Take a look.
The third India-Nordic summit was the last major engagement of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his two-day Norway visit. This was the first ever visit of an Indian Prime Minister to this country in over 40 years. Now, essentially, when it comes to the India-Nordic summit, focus was on blue economy, on green hydrogen and on mobility as well, with the Nordics keen on getting highly skilled Indian workers. Now, essentially, both sides want to build on each other's strength. India has a scale. The Nordic countries have technology, especially when it comes to clean technology and renewables, and focus also on bilateral relationship. The Indian Prime Minister had bilateral engagement with all Nordic countries, including with the host Prime Minister, the Norwegian Prime Minister. And we saw that both sides, India and Norway, elevating their relationship to green strategic partnership. This is the second ever green strategic partnership India has with any country after Denmark. And now from this visit, the two-day visit, Prime Minister travels to Italy. That concludes Prime Minister's five-nation tour, where focus was on UAE and building relationship with the European region. Siddhant Sibbal for WION in Oslo, Norway.
Moving on, thousands of troops in action, nuclear-capable missiles activated, strategic bombers in the air. Russia has launched sweeping nuclear exercises across multiple regions as Europe confronts rising anxiety over missiles, deterrence and military preparedness. And as the drills unfold, Vladimir Putin has now arrived in China, deepening strategic coordination with Xi Jinping.
Convoys of missile launchers rolled out. Strategic bombers prepared for launch. Nuclear submarines moved into operational positions. Russia began one of its largest nuclear readiness exercises in recent months. According to Russian officials, the exercises, involving 64,000 people and 7,800 pieces of military equipment, will rehearse the preparation and use of nuclear forces in the event of aggression. Moscow says that 140 aircraft, over 200 missile launchers, which will involve cruise and ballistic missiles, will be part of the drills. 73 surface ships and 13 submarines, including 8 strategic nuclear submarines, will be involved in the massive military exercise. Russia's defense ministry says the operation is testing combat readiness, command coordination, and the reliability of the country's strategic nuclear forces under simulated combat conditions. Moscow's nuclear signaling has also steadily extended beyond Russia's own borders. the nuclear-capable Oreshnik missile has been stationed in Belarus, Moscow's closest military ally, whose territory borders NATO members Poland, Lithuania and Latvia. Belarus is also holding simultaneous nuclear drills. The Oreshnik is a Russian intermediate-range ballistic missile, first used in combat against Ukraine in November 2024, when it struck the city of Dnipro. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has ordered his troops to reinforce Ukraine's northern borders, accusing Moscow of preparing new attacks from its ally Belarus. The accusations have been dismissed by the Kremlin. The drills are unfolding with heightened urgency as Moscow faces growing aerial attacks from Ukraine, targeting its military infrastructure and oil refineries. While Russian authorities insist that the exercise is planned and defensive in nature, the scale of the operation has raised concerns in the West. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The world is staring at a full-blown energy emergency. The International Energy Agency has now issued its sharpest warning yet. Global oil stockpiles are depleting rapidly. And at the current rate, the world may just have 5 weeks of accessible commercial supplies left. The West Asian war continues to choke crucial shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz. The global energy system is beginning to show signs of severe stress now. The aftershocks are spilling onto the streets. In Kenya, anger over soaring fuel prices has erupted into deadly protests. 4 people were killed after demonstrations broke out across multiple towns following sharp hikes in retail fuel prices. A nationwide public transport strike paralyzed commuter movement, leaving thousands stranded. Kenya now has suspended the strike to hold negotiations between the government and stakeholders. Kenya, remember, has almost no proven domestic oil reserves, and they depend heavily on imported fuel from West Asia. The African country is now feeling the direct impact of the Iran war. With no major refining capacity of its own, the country has become extremely exposed to global supply shocks. Meanwhile, in Bolivia, the energy crisis has turned into a political firestorm. Riot police clashed with thousands of protesters, demanding the resignation of President Rodrigo Paz. Farmers, miners, teachers, indigenous groups and labor unions have all blocked highways into La Paz, bringing supplies to a standstill. The government, remember, had removed long-standing fuel subsidies in an attempt to rescue the economy. But the move also sent fuel prices soaring. And now, demonstrators are demanding wage hikes, economic stability, and a rollback of privatization policies as the country struggles with shortages and a deepening cost of living crisis. The bigger picture is even more alarming. The IEA now says that global oil supply will fall short of demand this year. Now, if this happens, then it will be a dramatic reversal from its earlier forecast of a surplus. Global oil inventories, remember, fell by a record 246 million barrels in just March and April. The IEA, in response, has coordinated the largest strategic reserve release in history. About 400 million barrels were released to try and calm the markets. The agency now estimates that the war could wipe out nearly 3.9 million barrels of global daily supply through 2026. The economic damage has been escalating rapidly as well. According to media agency Reuters analysis, companies across America and Europe and Asia have already lost an estimated $25 billion due to the conflict. Soaring energy prices, disrupted shipping lanes, higher insurance costs, and fractured supply chains are all hitting industries across the board. And then there is the question of reserves. Who can survive this crisis and who cannot? At the most vulnerable end is Morocco, which holds the lowest proven oil reserves in Africa with just 684,000 barrels. South Africa has negligible crude reserves, while Ethiopia, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Kenya all have little to no strategic buffer against a prolonged supply shock. Cuba has already announced that it has completely run out of diesel and fuel oil. The country has pushed its power grid to the edge of collapse. Parts of the island are now enduring blackouts lasting up to 22 hours a day. Countries like Myanmar, Vietnam, and the Philippines are also considered highly exposed, with just about a month of oil storage available if the shipments through Hormuz remain blocked. But at the other end of the spectrum stands China, with a massive 1.3 billion barrel strategic petroleum reserve. China is believed to have the strongest buffer against a global oil shock, capable of withstanding up to 6 to 7 months of disrupted imports. Goldman Sachs now warns that global oil stock cover has fallen to its lowest level in 8 years. The world had 105 days of oil inventories in February. That number has now fallen to 101 days and could drop to just 98 by the end of this month. Days after U.S. President Donald Trump met his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing, America has rigged up a demand which is likely to rile up China. It has asked Beijing to release Panchen Lama, the second highest spiritual authority in Tibetan Buddhism. He has been missing for the last 31 years along with his family. Expressing its support for religious freedom of Tibetans and their freedom to preserve their unique cultural and linguistic identity, the U.S. State Department called upon China to stop persecuting Tibetans and others for their religious beliefs. The State Department said, and I'm quoting them here, Tibetan Buddhists, like members of all religious communities, should have the ability to freely select their own leaders, like the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama, according to their beliefs and without party-state interference. However, Trump did not raise this specific matter during his recent bilateral meeting with Xi Jinping. In fact, he remained silent on other issues as well, like China's discriminatory policy towards Uyghur Muslims. As per human rights groups, more than 1 million Uyghurs have been detained by Chinese authorities in detention facilities. Now, what is this latest controversy about? Well, traditionally, you see, the Dalai Lama plays a role in recognizing the next reincarnation of Panchen Lama and vice versa. On the 15th of May 1995, the Dalai Lama chose the then 6-year-old Gedhun Choki Nyama to be the 11th Panchen Lama. However, as per Tibetans in exile, the Chinese authorities kidnapped him and his family 3 days later. He's not been seen in public thereafter. In the same year, China officially recognized Gyaltsen Norbu as its own Panchen Lama. Norbu is now a senior Communist Party figure. In June last year, he met the Chinese president and reiterated his support for Xi and the ruling Communist Party. He also vowed to contribute in promoting national unity, Sinicization of religion, and modernizing Tibet. Subsequently, he sparked a row as well by suggesting that Chinese rituals will determine the succession of the Dalai Lama. This was vociferously countered by the Tibetan parliament in exile. It emphasized that the China-appointed Panchen Lama neither has religious nor political authority. The latest row has renewed focus on a long-standing question that China is yet to answer. Where is the Panchen Lama? With that, let's tell you what's coming up on the other side of Gravitas. Pakistan may soon be renaming historic locations across Lahore. More on this up ahead. And India's Supreme Court has refused to stay its order of removing aggressive stray dogs who pose a threat to life. Activists and dog lovers call it inhumane. Tensions between Ottawa and Washington continue to escalate. In a major blow to the long-standing US-Canada security partnership, the United States has suspended its participation in a joint defense board that dates back to World War II. Washington has accused Canada of failing to meet its defense obligations, deepening a growing rift between the two neighbors under US President Donald Trump's second term. The Pentagon has announced that the United States will pause its role in the Permanent Joint Board on Defense, bilateral security body that was created in 1940. The U.S. Undersecretary for Defense, Elbridge Colby, said that the move would help Washington reassess whether the forum continues further to serve American interests. He also claimed that Canada has failed to make, quote, credible progress on its defense commitments. Now, Canada's Defense Minister, David McGuinty, reportedly told local media that Canada will, quote, work with trusted partners who are ready to work with the country. The board helped build North America's defense structure. During World War II and the Cold War, it also played a key role in developing NORAD, which is the joint US-Canada Aerospace Defense Command, designed to detect possible enemy attacks during the Cold War era. The board also helped establish early warning systems for defense using radar stations across North America. Now, the announcement comes as relations between the two allies continue to worsen. Trump has repeatedly accused Canada of relying too heavily on American military power, while also targeting Ottawa over trade, border security, and drug trafficking. The American president, remember, has also suggested in the past that Canada could avoid such penalties by ceding its sovereignty and becoming America's 51st state. At the same time, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has pushed for reducing Canada's economic and military dependence on the United States. The diplomatic friction also coincides with Canada reviewing its deal to purchase F-35 fighter jets from the United States over cost and maintenance concerns. Moving on now, even as it remains deeply embroiled in a war with Russia, Ukraine continues to fight a parallel battle, one against corruption. A new report submitted to the US Congress reveals that American authorities are now investigating dozens of suspected cases involving fraud, corruption, and the possible diversion of military aid, which is meant for Kiev's war effort. According to a joint report prepared by the Inspector General of the Pentagon, the U.S. State Department and USAID, as of March 31st, American authorities are currently handling 56 open investigations linked to financial assistance for Ukraine and the transfer of American-supplied weapons to third parties. The report also states that 13 investigations have already been closed, 4 cases have been referred to the U.S. Department of Justice, while another one has been handed over to a separate investigative agency. The document also states that American authorities working with Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau detained a Ukrainian corruption suspect hiding in the United States over allegations of abuse of office and document forgery. U.S. immigration authorities also detained 3 Ukrainian citizens wanted on criminal charges back in Ukraine. Since the Russia-Ukraine war broke out in February of 2020, various high-profile investigations and audits in Ukraine have uncovered major vulnerabilities in Ukraine's wartime supply chain, especially involving fraudulent procurement deals and missing military hardware. In January 2024, a Pentagon watchdog audit found that the U.S. failed to properly track more than $1 billion worth of advanced weapons sent to Ukraine. Inspectors reportedly could not verify the movement of nearly 10,000 Javelin anti-tank missiles, 2,500 Stinger missiles, and other sensitive equipment moving through Poland toward the battlefield. Around the same time, Ukraine's security service also uncovered an alleged $40 million embezzlement plot involving former and current defense officials, along with a private arms company. Authorities say the money was allocated for the purchase of 100,000 mortar shells, but the funds allegedly vanished into offshore accounts while no ammunition reached frontline troops. And at the start of this year, Ukraine's State Bureau of Investigation dismantled a criminal ring accused of scamming the military out of nearly $63 million. Investigators say the suspects received state funds to supply anti-personnel and anti-tank mines, but many of the weapons were either unusable or never delivered. The Pentagon report on weapons supplies also comes at a time when Ukraine is currently facing critical shortages of advanced air defense missiles and radar systems. In fact, corruption is such a major issue that it is impacting the country both domestically as well as internationally. An August 2025 Gallup poll found that 85% of Ukrainians believed that corruption remained widespread within their government. While ongoing corruption and governance issues have been frequently cited by European Union leaders as major hurdles against Kiev's membership bid into the European Union. The corruption continues to plague Kiev, reaching even the highest powers of corridor. Remember, just last week, Andrei Yermak, the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky's former advisor, once considered the second most powerful man in Ukraine, is now behind bars after Ukraine's anti-corruption court ordered his detention over money laundering allegations. American President Donald Trump is known for taking decisions as per his whims and fancies, keeping aside conventional logic. For instance, have you heard of a head of state settling a personal lawsuit with his own government in exchange for creating a fund for his supporters? Well, such a scenario is raising eyebrows now. Earlier in January, Trump and his sons sued the Internal Revenue Service, which is America's federal tax agency, after his and his company's tax records were leaked in 2019 and 2020. They demanded $10 million in damages, citing a dent to their reputation. But here comes the surprise. Donald Trump and his sons agreed to drop the charges. In return, his administration agreed to create the Anti-Weaponization Fund. Now, as per the U.S. Department for Justice, this fund provides a formal process for people and entities who claim to have been unfairly targeted by the government for political, ideological, or personal reasons. With a corpus of $1.7 billion, this fund will be overseen by a 5-member commission appointed by Attorney General Todd Blanche. This is not at all It doesn't end here. Remember, Donald Trump's shadow will loom large as he will have the power to remove the members. This commission can issue monetary rewards as well as a formal apology to claimants. Now, the move has triggered a political firestorm expectedly. Democrats dubbed this as a slush fund, which will be unjustly used to enrich Trump supporters with taxpayers' money. This may include nearly 1,600 people who've been accused of being involved in the 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. 93 Democrats in the U.S. House of Representatives have now moved the court, urging this to be rejected in the settlement.
Because his original claim was utterly bogus and vacuous. They shouldn't be settling for anything because there's no validity to his underlying cause of action. So really the report should be Donald Trump is setting up a $1.7 billion political slush fund for the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and his other political lieutenants and hangers-on.
Meanwhile, yet another move by Donald Trump has left everyone baffled. As per reports, the Trump administration will allow 10,000 more white South Africans into America in the current fiscal year, at a time when the refugee program remains cut off to people from almost every other country. Last year, remember, he restricted the number of refugees for the fiscal year 2026 to 7,500. Most of these slots were reserved for Afrikaners, a group of white South Africans descended mainly from Dutch settlers. Now remember, South Africa remains America's largest trading partner in Africa. Justifying its move, raising the refugee ceiling to 17,500 now, the U.S. State Department reportedly told the U.S. Congress that unforeseen developments in South Africa have created an emergency refugee situation. Previously, Donald Trump claimed that a genocide is taking place in South Africa where white farmers are being brutally killed and their land is getting confiscated. However, critics have slammed this claim.
Afrikaners are just being used as pawns in this racist policy of the Trump administration. There is, of course, proven over and over again that there's no genocide against white Afrikaners in South Africa. The majority of white Afrikaners in South Africa are living a happy, happy life.
Now, in pursuance of his stance, Trump cut off aid to South Africa, boycotted last year's G20 summit in Johannesburg, and banned the country from attending any G20 meetings in US this year. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has reiterated that Donald Trump's claims are baseless. All right, shifting our focus. When will it rain? Well, that is the question millions across India are now asking as a relentless heat wave tightens its grip over large parts of the country. From Delhi to Rajasthan, from Madhya Pradesh to Maharashtra, the summer sun is now turning dangerous. Temperatures in the national capital have touched 45 degrees Celsius, while the India Meteorological Department warns that the heat is now likely to intensify even further over the next 4 to 5 days. And as the heat builds up, so does the anxiety around the arrival of the monsoon. Because remember, for India, the monsoon is an economic lifeline. Nearly half of India's farmland still depends directly on rainfall. Monsoon recharges reservoirs, supports drinking water supplies, powers hydroelectricity, cools cities, and determines the fate of crops, food prices, and rural incomes. A good monsoon can boost the economy. A delayed or weak monsoon can trigger water shortage, crop stress, inflation, and power demand surges. And right now, large parts of India are still waiting for some relief. The Met Department has now issued orange and yellow heatwave alerts across several parts of the country as temperatures continue to rise sharply. According to the IMD, maximum temperatures across northwestern India could rise by another 2 to 3 degrees Celsius over the next few days, while Chhattisgarh may see an increase of up to 4 degrees. An orange alert, which signals severe and prolonged heatwave conditions, has been issued for parts of Rajasthan, West Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra's Vidarbha region. Meanwhile, yellow alerts remain in place as well for Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, Chandigarh, East Uttar Pradesh, Telangana and coastal Andhra Pradesh, warning residents to remain cautious and updated on the weather conditions. Meanwhile, health experts are now warning of a sharp rise in the risk of dehydration, heat exhaustion and heat stroke, especially for children, the elderly and outdoor workers. Scientists say that climate change is making these heat waves longer, hotter and more frequent. India's summers are becoming increasingly erratic, with record heat often followed by sudden dust storms, intense thunderstorms or short bursts of extreme rainfall. The Weather Department says temperatures are expected to remain above normal across northwest and central India through the coming week until a stronger weather system or the advance of the monsoon finally brings the cooling rain that millions are desperately waiting for. Right, moving on to other updates now. Lahore may soon be reconnecting with its deep-rooted historic past. In a major cultural revival push in Pakistan, the Punjab government, led by Chief Minister Maryam Nawaz Sharif, has approved a new plan to restore the original names of historic roads, markets, neighborhoods, and landmarks across Lahore. According to government officials, the initiative aims to bring Lahore's rich civilizational history back into public memory and strengthen the city's cultural identity. Pakistan's Punjab province government says that Lahore carries the legacy of Hindu, Sikh, Muslim and British eras and has remained a center of multiple civilizations for centuries. But decades of political changes after the partition in 1947 and later administrative decisions reportedly gradually pushed many historic names into the background. Officials now want to revive those identities and showcase Lahore more strongly as a cultural and tourism hub. Under this proposal, several locations may regain their earlier names. The proposed changes reportedly include Islampura, once again becoming Krishan Nagar. Sant Nagar may replace Sunnat Nagar. Dharampura could retain, in fact, its older name of Mustafabad, while Ram Gali may replace Rahman Gali. Authorities also are considering restoring names such as Lakshmi Chowk, Lawrence Road, Queen's Road, and Outfall Road. The move comes decades after several landmarks across Lahore were renamed, including Lahore Stadium, renamed to Gaddafi Stadium, Mall Road becoming Shahra-e-Qaid-e-Azam, and Minto Park turning into Iqbal Park. But officials say many original names continue to survive in public memory. Pakistani historians and archaeologists, meanwhile, have reportedly supported this initiative, stating that historical names represent cultural heritage and they should remain preserved beyond politics or religion. Pakistan's Punjab government says the project is not simply about renaming roads or streets. It's about restoring Lahore's historical character for future generations. The human brain contains nearly 86 billion neurons. These cells communicate continuously. But when those circuits break down through injury or disease, the damage can be devastating. And now scientists are testing a new brain bypass technology that could one day help reconnect damaged neural pathways with extraordinary precision. Take a look.
Inside laboratories, researchers are attempting something once thought impossible. Not replacing the brain, not uploading minds into machines, but carefully rebuilding broken communication lines between neurons. A new technology called links is giving scientists the ability to create custom electrical connections between brain cells. Researchers say the system acts like a controlled neural bridge, helping signals travel around damaged or weakened circuits. In simple terms, it is similar to creating a tiny biological detour inside the brain. Scientists claim to have demonstrated how the new tech can connect specific neurons with remarkable accuracy, potentially allowing damaged brain networks to regain lost communication pathways. Experts stress This is still early-stage research. It is not a cure for neurological disorders and has not yet reached routine human treatment. But the technology is generating excitement because many brain diseases involve damaged or misfiring circuits. Companies and research labs around the world are already testing brain implants that help paralyzed patients move robotic arms or type words using thought alone. Other scientists are studying electrical stimulation techniques to restore movement after spinal cord injuries. The human brain remains one of science's greatest mysteries. But step by step, researchers are learning not just how to observe neural circuits, but how to carefully reshape them, and that could redefine the future of neurological medicine.
Venezuela Fury, the 16-year-old daughter of former heavyweight boxing champion Tyson Fury, has married her longtime boyfriend Noah Price in a private ceremony on the Isle of Man. The wedding reportedly took place at the Royal Chapel of St. John, where marriage at 16 years of age is legal with parental consent. Ahead of the ceremony, Venezuela posted a TikTok video as well, where she showed herself waking up for her wedding day and getting her hair done. Tyson Fury and his wife Paris Fury were both present there, and according to reports, the ceremony was a lavish affair featuring a dramatic 50-foot wedding dress, train and multiple bridesmaids, with cameras also filming for the family's Netflix reality series At Home with the Furies. But this marriage has sparked a major debate online, with many social media users questioning whether the couple is too young to tie the knot. Others, however, defended the decision, pointing to traditions within the Irish traveller community to which the Fury family belongs. While most countries have set the age of 18 as the legal age to marry, remember there are several nations around the world which still allow marriage at 16. Let's quickly tell you some of these countries. Argentina, the age of 16 here with parental consent and court permission. Australia and Spain allow marriage at 16 with judicial approval. Canada with parental consent. Pakistan is another country where it's allowed. New Zealand and Cyprus, they permit marriage at 16 or 17 years of age for girls or boys with family court approval. Portugal allows marriage at 16 as well with parental authorization or a registry office exemption. South Korea permits marriage at 16 with parental or guardian consent. Ecuador, under strict exceptional provisions. Egypt, the age is set at 16 for females and 18 for males. Hungary permits marriage at 16 with parental and guardianship authority consent. Italy also permits under exceptional circumstances with juvenile court approval. South Africa, Nigeria, Morocco and Algeria all allow marriage at 16 with parental approval and legal restrictions. All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas. As always, we will keep getting you news and analysis from across the world. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye. Good night.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week, creating the maximum impact.